Hey guys, how's it going? It's Baggins here, and today we're going to be talking about dedicated PvP servers in New World. As yesterday, we got the official news from a developer that there are not going to be dedicated PvP servers on launch. There was a post that was made on the Steam community forums, somebody requesting that they add PvP servers for the launch. This is not any new conversation in New World. It's been requested basically as long as I can think about the game, at least until they moved away from being a PvP open world sandbox game. If you guys don't know, back in 2018, 2019, they made a major shift in the way that the game's focus on what the game was going to be, and that it kind of was like a fantasy Rust in some ways. You had little Azoth fissures around the map. You could build a base pretty much wherever you wanted to. Then you attack other people's bases to try and raid it for stuff. It was, it was very sandbox, very open world. There wasn't really that much in the way of PvE. It didn't even necessarily resemble an MMO RPG that much. Like I say, it was much more like a Rust or an Ark or something like that. But anyway, they did decide to make a pretty big design change sort of around that time, and New World started to become what we have today, with a lot more PvE, a lot more focus on the crafting and dungeons, exploration of the world, and all that other stuff. But ever since then, there has been a big chunk of players requesting for PvP in the game, and a specific server, a specific place just to engage in all things PvP. And I can see where they're coming from. I do think the PvP aspect of New World is one of its best ones. I mean, it's been in the game for the longest, so it makes sense that this is what the game would feel like it's good at its core. And when the 50 versus 50 wars don't turn into turn-based combat, the PvP does feel pretty good in my opinion in New World. But yeah, there was this post made on the Steam community forums, and it was met with an official response from one of the developers. They go by the name Windsward, and the post says, "We don't have plans for dedicated PvP servers at launch. The main issue is dividing dev and support requirements between slightly different versions of the game. Then we'd have to be really clear about what long-term support looks like, since those PvP players would expect game updates targeting their version of the game too, but mapping to their top needs and wants, separate from how the majority of other players were playing New World." Now, I think the biggest thing to take away from this is that last sort of sentence there where it says, separate from the majority of other players were playing New World. And I actually think he's pretty accurate here, and that actually the majority of people playing New World do want PvE. They don't mind PvP, and I honestly think I'm one of them, which is kind of surprising, because if you look back at the history of my channel over the past 3 years, I've just been playing PvP. I've been doing Battle Royale. The main objective in those games is just to kill other players, so it is surprising to find myself actually kind of wanting more PvE in the game. I feel like the PvP is okay as it is. It could be made better. Certainly the PvP faction quests, the ones where you have to go out and kill 6 turkeys or 3 sheep or something, they're just horrible, and they should probably be replaced with something more PvP orientated, dispatch a caravan from Windsward to Everfall, and you have to defend it on the way, and other people can attack it and take resources or something. I think that'd be much more cool and much more in theme with the game than just going out and killing some sheep. But generally, I do feel like the game has some pretty good bones to its PvP, and I think if you take a look at the Steam charts from the preview event of last year and then the beta event of this year, the main differences between those two clients being how much PvE content they've added. You can see that the numbers, I think they're at double or triple or something. There is a lot more people playing during the beta event than there was during the preview event. Now, I know you guys are going to say, well, Baggins, they paid a ton of money on marketing, and that's true. That is definitely valid criticism, and that could be the direct result of why there were so many more players. But I do have to imagine that the PvE aspect and the fact that they've added more PvE and refined the crafting system and made the world even more explorable does play into the part of why New World is more popular than it was a year ago. So to wrap this back around and come to the core question, does New World need PvP servers? Is it something the game needs to survive? I personally don't think so. I think they just need to add more incentives and make the current sort of open world PvP content a little bit more engaging with what's already in there. Now, I think it's going to vary from server to server depending on what experience you guys had. I was playing on the Nav server, which was one of the most popular servers on Europe. It had massive queues pretty much all of the time. But as a result, there was a healthy population of PvPers in there. Now, unfortunately, I chose to play Covenant, and the vast majority of the server was either Syndicate or Marauders, so every time I did PvP flagged, I was, fighting 1 versus 10. But the opportunities were there for me. I think the idea of taking control of the forts to get a benefit over the the area is pretty cool as well. I don't think we saw enough of that really happening in the beta, and I'm not entirely sure why, because the fort is pretty significant. I think it's just the fact that you can constantly flip it back and forth. Maybe it just feels like you'll own the fort for maybe 10 minutes, then it's going to go back into control of the other factions, so you can't really take control of the benefits of the fort whilst also fighting for the fort at the same time. It's like, all right, I've got control of the fort, I'm gonna go do some quests now and get that 5% extra XP, but then it immediately sort of flips back into Marauder control mid-quest, and then you have to drop your quests and go and do the fort control again. So that's probably some of the problem. I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think about the whole flipping forts situation during beta, if it's something you guys engage upon at all. Did you find it fun? I also think it was a bit strange that you could just sort of go through the door into a fort even though you are the attacker. So it made sense in the same context that it makes sense in war, where the defenders can just teleport into their fort by just interacting with the door, but the fact that the attackers didn't have to break down the doors to get in, maybe that's like a nice change that they could do, which would then make taking control of forts like a little bit more challenging, but also mean that you probably own them for a longer amount of time as well. The other thing that I want to briefly touch on is the PvE in the game. Like I mentioned, I do think that there are a lot of players engaging with the PvE, myself included. If I look at what I spent my majority of time in New World doing, and probably part of it is the fact that I was playing Covenant and any PvP fights were just massively outnumbered against us. But I did spend a lot of time doing PvE as a result. I got a chance to check out every single dungeon. We did the invasions, we did all of the arenas, I think. I ran through Merkgard many times. And yeah, honestly, I think I did everything, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I did play an incredible amount of hours in the New World beta, like more than the average person ever would be able to, because I was playing it like full time effectively. You know, we were putting in 12, sometimes 15-hour days, which isn't not really like what the normal person would do. But as a result, I did kind of exhaust the PvE content. And again, I'm aware that I'm saying this, I'm not playing the game in a normal fashion, and they certainly shouldn't try and make the game cater towards me. But I've got to imagine that for the average player, probably within 2 months, they will also reach the point where they've exhausted a lot of the PvE content as well. Now, most likely, between like launch and 2 months afterwards, they will have done a pretty significant update. We already know that there's a bunch of new weapons ready to go, a new zone. If you guys are interested, link to that up in the top right. With the new zone is probably coming a new dungeon, and hopefully at some point we'll see raids as well. But right now, the game does feel like it is a little bit PvE light. So to decide that we're not going to entirely focus on PvP with dedicated PvP servers, but then also not have what I feel like is substantial PvE content, the game just ends up like not really being strong on either foot. Like, there's good stuff on both sides, but neither of, you know, the PvP or the PvE foot is particularly hefty when it lands on the ground. So hopefully this is something Amazon can address. I'm sure it is, honestly. Like, if we look at how much stuff they've added to the game during the alpha and how rapidly they're able to like iterate and get new content into the game, I think we're going to be fine. We've already heard about a 3v3 or 2v2 arena game mode coming in that's been data mined, so that sounds really good for the PvP side of things. Like, I would really love to see an arena in this game. And then yeah, just raids, more dungeons, and scaling difficulty for the dungeons. So a reason to run the dungeons a second, a third, a fourth time, but at a higher difficulty for higher rewards. I've said this many times, but I think it'd be great for the game. So yeah, that is basically it, guys. I just wanted to sort of ramble about the PvP, PvE state of the game, my thoughts on whether the game needs PvP dedicated servers. But as always, I pass the question off to you guys. What do you think? Does the game need dedicated PvP servers, or do you think as it is right now can be salvaged? They just need to sort of tweak things and iterate things. Let me know what you guys are thinking in those comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you go ahead and click the like button, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.